Hello, I'm Dr. Sri Banerjee, epidemiologist, biostatistician, faculty member. And in this video, I'm going to be going over a little bit about how to design surveys and survey instrumentation. So for starters, there's some ground rules that you want to be thinking about when you design your own survey. When you're thinking about creating your questions for that first survey that you make on your own, you may think that it's actually pretty straightforward, but the reality is when you go to make your own, it's more complicated than you may at first think. Um, it's easy to it's easier to many times answer somebody else's questions rather than come up with your own. But if you follow some of these basic principles, then you can then create your own questionnaires as well. So when you're thinking about questions, don't reinvent the wheel. There's measures of attitude, concepts, behavior. I've lectured on several existing databases of questionnaires and measures. Try to pull from what's there already. Um, if there's a concept that you're thinking of, there's a pretty good chance someone has already measured it before or done this before. Um, go try to look at what people have done in the past um, and 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 take from that. So when you're even doing your literature review, if there's authors that have measures, then take a look at that, how they've conceptualized it. Sometimes there's proxy measures that are well accepted in within the literature. So if there's a proxy measure, pay attention to that. So it's a variable that can be used in instead of another variable. So this is the place to start thinking about your questionnaires. This is how to start. There's questions in the general social survey, national election survey. There's also polling the nations. Some of these are now. This is a Harvard resource. The reason I'm lecturing over it is because some of these don't really exist anymore either. So I kind of wanted to update that, but also tell you about health-related survey research. So National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. There's questions used there, which you can pull from for your own research, and then also behavioral risk factor surveillance system, which provides you with indicators, several health indicators, outcomes, health factors. All of these are included within this. But one thing that I especially like about BRFSS is that this has some location level information as well. So how those are asked in that questionnaire is important to look at as well. When you're thinking about, then the next stage is to think about how to administer the survey. Pre-test it, potential respondents, maybe among a close group of friends or someone, get some feedback from it. If you know places where there need to be modifications, when I created the questionnaire for the grant-related research that I most recently was working on, I actually worked on the items along with collaborators and got their opinion and made several major modifications as a result of the collaboration rather than what I would have done individually. So thinking about also the mode of your survey, how are you going to be administering it? That's the third consideration to to be mindful of. Are you going to be administering this by mail, by phone? Sometimes, for instance, one survey primary data collection that I did over over a decade ago, looking at diabetes data, I used a combination of multiple strategies, depending on kind of patient characteristics. So in that strategy, I used the mailing option, where questionnaires were mailed out to each of the addresses. And then I also used the approach of phone administration. Um, and there were, of course, within the process of data collection, several volunteers that were recruited and trained to administer. Um, so think about this ahead of time when you're considering primary data collection. If you ask me nowadays, what is more the common way to collect data is through online surveys. There's broader scope and improved ability to ascertain power in a short amount of time if you use the online version, but then being aware of caveats, or things that might be that might be kind of barriers from completing your survey, you should be considering ahead of time, as there's more challenges sometimes when there's world events like the pandemic. So there's practical considerations to be thinking about. Speaking of practical considerations, keeping your questionnaire short is sometimes important as well. So that this doesn't mean that only shorter questionnaires are effective, but thinking about what holds the respondent's attention span when you're administering the questionnaire. So if they're taking a look at the questionnaire and they're only able to think for the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then you don't want to design a questionnaire that exceeds that. And then sometimes it may be a good idea to also assess for how long it took to complete the questionnaire. So if, for instance, in one study that I did, if the respondent took a couple of seconds, then that response was not counted. So timing is important, and also keep question order in mind. So maybe if respondents will pay attention more at the beginning or at the end, just depending on how everything is set up. Maybe you want it in randomized order. There's multiple types of questions. That's the next consideration. So filtering and branching are options. And I use this oftentimes, branching, where if one question is true, then they go into asking or answering another question. And so these types of different types of question designs can help to better guide not only what type of method you'll use, but also if you'll be like using SurveyMonkey or some one type of delivery method versus another. And then thinking about, are you going to ask open-ended versus closed-ended? The Grand Design study that I recently completed, there were both open-ended and closed-ended questions. So just be thinking about this. And then finally, you want to be you want to be thinking about rating scales for attitude questions. So sometimes agree, disagree. There's a continuum. Higher scores positive, lower scores negative. And then there's different types of effects that you can be thinking about. So I've been going through a lot of different concepts throughout this, but there's general kind of rules and guidelines that you want to be thinking about, and that is that the ideal question, it will be accomplishing and providing you with three things. So it measures the underlying concept it is intended to tap. It doesn't measure other concepts, and it's meaning the same thing to all respondents. So two people answering the questions won't think of different things. And so avoid very technical terms, jargon, people don't understand. And then at the same time, avoid vague or imprecise terms. So it's not clear what you get when you ask how important it is that a candidate shares your values. It might be more consistent for you to ask how important it is that a candidate shares your religious values, because values is too vague. See, so qualifiers are important where appropriate. So define things very specifically. It's not income means many different things to many different people. So you want to qualify that by total household income before taxes even. Avoid complex sentences, and then provide reference frames. So thinking about, for example, if you ask how often do you feel sad, some people might provide an answer about their life experience, and that's fine. But then you want to be thinking about a frame of reference. So during the past week, how often have you felt sad, or how often have you felt sad during the past week? So that's it's more specific. Make sure scales are ordinal. It's pretty self-explanatory. Avoid double-barreled questions. So that's a good one, because there's only one thing that a question can measure. I fall into this trap sometimes where I'm trying to ask too many things, and sometimes it's important to ask one question at a time within a questionnaire. Answer choices should anticipate all possibilities. Self-explanatory. If you want a single answer, make sure your answer choices are unique and include all possible responses. And then last but not least, but equally important, avoid questions using leading, emotional, or evocative language. So you don't want respondents to be thinking about a specific thing. You want them to, by themselves, come up with the specific answer. So, do you believe the U.S. should immediately withdraw troops from the failed war in Iraq? You're already leading them to give an answer. Instead, so for instance, do you support or oppose the tax? So, um, so it's in the way that you phrase these questionnaires, and how you do that. So as you can see, it's just in summary, it can be quite complex to try to construct your own questions for primary data collection. So if you use these guidelines, then it can make the process a lot easier. But again, the lesson here is, where possible, don't reinvent the wheel. Go out there and see what's already existing as it pertains to the research topic that you're trying to study. Thank you for listening.